Yeah, and especially like the Ranitomea species where they're
Yeah.
like the size of your thumbnail, like the human eye can only do so much. A lot of people assume every single one is just very smooth and shiny, but a lot of them have really cool bumpy textures and stuff like that. So it's always cool to like see a new frog for the first time with my eyes and then see what my camera picks up and how different those things can be. One thing I've said a lot is that what separates a good animal photographer from a not so good animal photographer is patience.
Mm.
You have to have an obscene amount of it.
Today, I'm speaking with Zac Herr, who is the human behind the Instagram account I Am Making Art. If you are a reptile or amphibian keeper and you're on Instagram, you probably already follow Zac. He has an incredible page. He's a remarkable photographer. And in this episode, we discuss everything from how he got started into reptile photography and amphibian photography and how that's built into an incredible career being an exotic animal photographer. We get into some of the nerdy details as far as, camera settings and lenses and what bodies to use, but really we also give tips for people who want to just take animals or photos of their animals with their iPhone and how to do that successfully. I know so many of us are hoping to capture good images and then you try to do it and you just realize you don't have the skill set. So hopefully this episode gives you some tactics to use to capture better photos. And we also discuss Zac's book that is coming out, and actually by the time you're listening to this, it should have already been released, I think about a week ago. His book called What Is That? It is a photography book, the first book he's published, and it's just I have a digital copy on my computer and it's amazing. I am absolutely purchasing a copy myself, and it is a nice hardcover photography book. And if you want amazing images of the animals that we keep in your home, then you're definitely going to want to pick up this book. I will say at the very end, Zac talks about how to pick up the book. Go to his website and make a purchase. There's a chance that by the time you're listening to this, they've already sold out. So if they are, absolutely go reach out to Zac and let him know that you're interested in it, because either way, you should get your hands on the copy of a book. Either they're still available and you can go purchase one today, or they're not available anymore and we just let Zac know that there's enough interest to do another run. So if unfortunately they're sold out, then don't worry, you can just hang tight and there should be another run happening soon. Let's jump into this episode. For you photography nerds or just animal nerds in general, you're going to like it. Enjoy the episode and I will talk to you after. Did you know that in a couple of years, ZooMed Laboratories will have been an active business for 50 years in the reptile and exotic pet keeping community? That is incredible. The only way a small family-run business can actually last that long is if they're doing something right. That's why it's absolutely no surprise to me that ZooMed is offering a bunch of free resources for you and me to help us be better keepers. Later on in this episode, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about ZooMed's university as well as the ZooMed Education Center on their website. Well, Zac, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Excited to talk to you.
I think your artwork, is almost ubiquitous. If they're in the reptile hobby and they have Instagram, they are probably following you right now, even if they aren't aware of who you are, because you have so many photos that have gone viral and things, and it's just beautiful work. And we're going to talk about some of the projects you've been working on. But I'm curious from your point of view, like, have you always been like an artist first or photographer first and then an animal person, or did the animals come first, or was it kind of all at the same time?
That's a good question. So I think, probably like many people watching this podcast, I was a dinosaur kid. So always loved animals. Have always like been around that. Loved going to zoos and things like that. The art stuff, like I always enjoyed making art, like drawing, doing whatever, just seeing art, going to museums, watching movies, just like anything that keeps like that creative side of my brain going. But I think college is sort of where everything started to converge a little bit. I was in business school and I liked marketing and I liked the content of business school, but the business school environment was kind of horrible. Honestly, it's just so many people waiting to like get their first like corporate job, climb the ladder, wear a suit and tie, do all that stuff. And no one really paid attention the way I did in like the advertising classes and stuff like that, where it was more of an art thing. So I kind of decided I needed to take a brief break from that. And I took one photo 101 class in college. And that sort of pushed me a little bit more into the art space from like iPhone photos and stuff like that. And then around that same time, I got my first poison dart frogs as pets too. So probably like that 20, what would that be, 14, 15 years when everything started to come into what it has become now, just at very, very early stages.
Okay, wow. So pretty much both of them started later than I was expecting. I would have thought that you would have had an animals as a young person is also like, photography, because when you look at your work, you assume you've been doing it for an extremely long time, but it's actually not, all things considered, it's not something you've been doing
Yeah.
for your whole lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I had like some turtles and stuff as a kid. We had a dog growing up. So like I've had pets and stuff, but it wasn't until I was out on my own and I saw some dart frogs at a pet store one day. And I was just like, this is what I've got to do. Like, I'm going to figure this out. I didn't buy them from a pet store. So I'm sure people listening are cringing a little bit for that one. But I did find a breeder near me. But yeah, it was a lot later and about 10 years now, uh, sort of covers everything that I've done, which is like a third of my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then as far as the photography goes, once you kind of got into it, I'm sure you immediately had a passion for it. Did you see yourself trying to turn it into a career quickly, or did that just kind of randomly pop up?
Sometimes, like when I a book, I was looking back on it, and I've always felt like it was sort of random. Basically, I got a camera to take pictures of my dart frogs because back then, like a phone camera was not good.
Hmm.
Like they were like maybe 10 megapixels. So we couldn't like do what we can now creatively with everything accessible to us. So I bought a DSLR to take pictures of my frogs to show people. And I would just take pictures of them like in their enclosures. They were not good photos at all. And sort of through that, and then getting to know a bunch of like fellow hobbyists, Jared Ruffing, who owns Ruffing's Reina Tomea, is like hour and a half from me. And I had gotten a few frogs from him. I had seen Joel Sartore doing his photo arc stuff, and I sort of thought like he does a lot, like he does all animals, but he doesn't focus as much on reptiles and amphibians. And like that's what I'm really passionate about. So maybe I can find a little path there. And Jared was the first one to let me come over to take pictures of his collection. And then from there, it was like, oh, I saw what you did at Jared's house. Can you come to my house? Can you come to my house? And it was just like that friend referral network of people vouching for me that I'm not a crazy person and I'm okay to invite to your home. And that's kind of what got the ball rolling.
Wow. So it really is like, I was really expecting you to give me one way or the other. It's kind of bizarre that and it makes sense actually, that the photography and the herp keeping basically was like synergistic. It came at the same time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
bought the camera to take pictures of your frogs. And that's pretty remarkable. And then it is amazing. Like even someone, I don't do anything nearly as creative as you do, but just even with the podcast, it's amazing how much you learn just by doing, and how like when you first start, you're like, yeah, I think this is a great photo. And then you look back now and you're like, what the hell is this thing? Like,
Yeah.
and that I won't even listen to anything old that I produce, because I'm like, I cannot do it. It's just so bad. And that's pretty much a common like, trope about creative work, but it is amazing how far you can come just by
Yeah.
practicing.
I mean, I don't know. Art gets into such like a philosophical debate. Like, do you have to go to art school? Do you have to like know all these rules and do all these things? And like, I took one class in college and that was it. And the rest is just practicing. So like what works for me, I mean, it obviously worked out, but other people come at it so many different ways. And I don't know, you kind of just got to follow what's working for you in the moment. And I just stuck with going to people's houses and I'd look at the photos afterwards and just say like, okay, what do I like about this? What do I not like? And then as a college student, I was pretty limited budget wise to what kind of gear I could afford. So it was a lot of just makeshift stuff to get it done early on, but just stuck with it.
Yeah. And that's probably good news for some people listening who probably want to get into some type of photography, especially if you have animals at home. It's kind of nice to be able to take pictures of them.
Sure.
But there is this intimidation factor when you see someone's work like yourself. You think, wow, this is this must be a huge culmination of work and education and everything. But really, it's just getting down and taking pictures and learning how camera works, learning how to adjust lighting, and learning how to build sets. That's the thing that gives you the value.
Yeah, it was just a lot of Googling and watching YouTube videos. And I'm lucky that I do have a cousin who's a photographer, so I could ask him for tips. But I don't know, you just got to develop that addiction for it and just want to do it and
Yeah.
keep pushing yourself and repeat. And like, I mean, you're going to take horrible photos, make bad art, but that's just part of the process. Like, you don't need to get hung up on that. Like, what you did right now is going to look bad to you years from now. So don't get too caught up in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was always exotics focused then. Like there was never a point where you're like, I'm going to do like maternity photos for a while to make some money doing this. You're just like, I'm going to just laser in on exotics.
Yeah, I even to this day, like for a few like close friends and family members, I've done like their portraits and things like that. But the best thing about animal photography is you don't have to show the animal the photo when it's finished and get
Yeah,
their
yeah.
opinion on it. People always want like, oh, my teeth looks white, like looks yellow. Can you whiten it, or can you get rid of this zit or whatever it is? And like that back and forth with a stranger is just not something that appeals to me. So I'll do it for like friends and family where I can just talk to them. But the customer service is much easier with animals than people for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point. And then, so tell us about kind of your, I mean, actually, let's start with the Instagram, because Instagram is probably where people have probably found you on if they have stumbled
Yeah.
across you. How long have you been posting on there? And was there a point where it started to kind of take off?
Yeah. I mean, it's still the same Instagram that I was using like for my personal page when I was younger. So like if you scroll all the way back to the beginning, you'll see like pictures of my dog. For a while, I was really hooked on taking pictures of reflections in puddles on the street. I thought that was like, I don't know, super cool or whatever. And it eventually just turns into animal stuff, and then it just gets better over time. And it's kind of cool where you can just see it follow that whole arc and see it change and develop over time. But I don't know, the Instagram thing, like again, when I first started this, like reels weren't a thing. You didn't like there were influencers, but it's not the same way that it is now. So it was just a very different space where like it was much easier to go viral for a photo. So I was able to get on that early. But now it's much harder to do things without video and things like that, which is tough, but video is not my thing. So I'm just sticking to what I do and keeping with it. And if people want to keep liking and following, great, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And then as far as your, like, how does your career essentially work? Like, do you plan out, I'm going to go to this collection to take photos, or do people contact you mostly, or do you have a long-term plan for capturing more pictures? Like, what does it look like on your end?
It's kind of wherever my life is at the
Okay.
moment. So I don't do this full time. I've got a regular day job in marketing. So that has a balance. I've got a wife and we've got a dog. I've got family and friends. So there are all these different things that require attention and effort too beyond photo stuff. So if I'm really busy with personal life, it's time to dig into the photo archives and dig stuff up that I haven't posted before and share that. Um, but overall, it's sort of like I don't know if as needed is the right way to put it, but because I'm not doing it as a full-time job, I can kind of do what I want when I want to. So, if I go back to like the start, it was sort of anyone that will let me come over anytime, I'll be there because I was in college. It was easy to just show up wherever. But then as time has gone on, I just got to be a little bit more selective on mainly weekends, maybe a Friday, maybe a Monday. And then now that I've photographed tons of different animals, there are some things where like I could use better photos of that with this new gear that I've got, so I'll go reshoot this. But most of the time these days, it's specifically looking for things that I haven't done yet.
Hmm. And then personally, do you have a collection of dart frogs yourself, or?
I used to, I don't
Okay.
anymore.
Okay.
That just kind of goes back to the life balance thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're trying to do a life and have photography as a passion, it is very, very expensive. And then you've got to have even more time away. So I kind of got to that point where I was like, okay, I can't really care for this like larger collection and do the photo stuff and have a life. I've got to make a choice here. And I picked photography because that sort of lets me see even more animals and get more experience, but I don't have to actually take care of them, which is nice. It's like babysitting almost.
Yeah, yeah, that is nice. And
Yeah,
I want to talk about, we'll talk about the actual, techniques for taking these photos
sure.
and sort of the tech stuff, more technical conversation a little bit later. But I'm also curious from yourself, like, do you have any highlights of animals that you've worked with or animals that you've shot that Is that how you pronounce? Do you just say animals that I've shot? It
Yeah,
doesn't sound.
it
Yeah,
doesn't sound good, but that's what I say.
sounds a little aggressive. But anyway, do
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
do any species stand out or like projects that you worked on stand out?
I mean, frogs are always going to be the favorite. Like, they're just the best animal. So I could do those. If I had to pick one animal to do forever, it would be frogs. Um, it's been really fun still staying friends with Jared Ruffing because when new Reina Tomea come into the hobby, he's usually one of the first people to get them. So I get to be a part of that, like sharing it with people, showing people first photos that aren't cell phone pictures. So that's very rewarding. Um, man, so many good moments over the years, though. Like it's weird because if you look at my photography career from like a, I don't know, real world accomplishments beyond social media stuff, all of the real world stuff that I'm most proud of happened really, really soon. So, like a lot of the earlier shoots are some of my favorites. Like I did a shoot with these unisexual species of salamanders that were super cool. And that's always been a favorite because that led to Nat Geo. I got to do some stuff with the Rainforest Alliance early on with red-eyed tree frogs because those are classic. So there are definitely some animals that stick out as big moments.
Yeah.
Uh, but all of that stuff is sort of like existed outside of social media, which is also interesting.
Like for example, with Nat Geo, what does that sort of look like? Do they somebody contact you and ask you to take photos of certain things, or what's the story with that?
So I got connected with a local researcher at Ohio State, Rob Denton, and he was uh, researching these species. And he was 10 minutes from me. Ohio State University is where I went to school. Uh, so I just said, like, hey, would it be possible for me to take some pictures? Like, could we do something? And he set that up, let me come over and shoot. That was very interesting because it was like inside a giant walk-in fridge because you've got to keep them cool.
Hmm.
So it was like working in a restaurant in some aspects. So I'm just like freezing in this giant fridge for a few hours. But then his research got picked up by a bunch of different magazines and institutions, just getting really good press. And then Nat Geo picked it up and they said, hey, we need a picture for your article. And he said, that's great because I just had someone over. I'll have them send you pictures. So it's really just like a right place, right time. I wasn't doing it for that reason. I did it because it was going to be cool and I just wanted to. And then a couple weeks or a month later, then it just became something much bigger.
Do you have that framed somewhere? Like, did you get the issue?
It's an online publication,
Okay.
but I do have a copy of that article. Yeah, it's pretty surreal to see your picture with that gold border around it.
For sure, yeah. And so, do they pay you for that? I'm sure they pay you for that.
No, that was not paid.
Oh, they
I
don't
think
pay you. Okay.
that's something that a lot of people don't know really is that it varies situation to situation, but a lot of times they might use stock photos that they have access to.
Mm.
But overall, Nat Geo doesn't have a lot of staff photographers anymore. You'll see like Joel Sartori is the one that people know, and like obviously that's a different situation. But there are a lot of like field researchers that take pictures out in the jungle or whatever, and they sort of contract with Nat Geo or share that stuff out, but they're not like employees of them. So like that type of photo career doesn't really exist anymore the way people might think it does. It's not to say it's totally gone, but the photography is usually something that people are doing secondarily or just through different connections, not as like a full-time thing for one organization.
Gotcha. And then, so for we'll jump into the technical side as well, because I think some things people could learn from you that they could implement with their iPhone to take nice photos of their animals just for their own personal, collection. But one thing that Joel Sartori does, and as well as you, is you've basically isolate the animal in the frame by itself. I mean, you talked about how you started early taking photos of the animals in their enclosure, and that's really cool too. And that would be more like wildlife photography, maybe if you're in situ somewhere. But I think what makes your photo stand out and Joel's photo stand out so well is like just the animal on the stark background. So was that a conscious decision that you made? And like, tell us about that choice.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much straight up like I want to be like Joel. Like that's that's what the mindset was when I first started. And then through, I don't know if this is uh, arrogant or just overconfidence or whatever. But I was like, I'm going to do just reptiles and amphibians, and I'm going to find a way to do it better than he does. That was like my mindset as like a young college kid. Like, I can do this. I'm going to be the best. And then I think that's changed over time. And now that I realize like that's such a subjective thing, like there are so many of his photos where I'm like, I could never do that, or someone else's photos that are like, I don't know, maybe not the resolution that mine are, or this or that, like technical things, but it's still a phenomenal photo.
Hmm.
So there's just so much more to it than what I thought initially, where it's like, if I could just get it technically perfect, everything else takes care of itself. And that's not really how art works.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So how do you go about, taking photos of your first dart frogs outside of their enclosures? You have to build some kind of like, what's the set that you put them in, like a little box or?
Yeah. So when I first started, like I said, I was pretty broke in college. So I found a box that we got some delivery in, just like a square cardboard box. And I cut the top and the sides out. And then I put wax paper, or I think it was, yeah, pretty sure it was wax or parchment paper, just like some semi-transparent paper that could get really hot because I couldn't afford flashes. So then I'd take CFL bulbs in like those metal pie plate type of reflectors that some
Mhm.
people use as like heat lamps. And then I put those like on the side or the top of the box. And then on the inside, I went to Staples and bought some like poster board and just cut it to fit so it could fit inside. And that was the first light box setup. It was probably like maybe $15 worth of equipment, but that's how it started. And then from there, as I started to learn like how light worked and how my camera worked and what I needed that box to do, and also got a job and started making money so I could afford to buy nicer things. I just sort of developed and iterated on that same idea. And I'm essentially doing the same thing today. It's just not a cardboard box with CFL lights.
Yeah, that's so classic. Like a way to start where you're just literally just hacking something together to make
Yeah.
it work. And then, so now you pretty much exclusively shoot inside a light box, right? You don't do much shooting inside an enclosure or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't do inside of a enclosure because I mean the animals can just hide and it's too difficult. Um, Now I've just got it's basically the same type of light box, but it's one I bought off Amazon years and years ago that's just got collapsible sides, and I just leave the top off. And the box, really more than anything, is to help animals that are too flighty and they're trying to run away. It's to just keep them there so I don't lose them or nothing bad happens. But if the animal's pretty calm, I just won't even use the light box and I'll just roll out a large sheet of paper and put a sheet of acrylic down for them to sit on to get that nice reflection. And then I'll just shoot that way.
Mm. So can you walk us through your camera equipment, maybe your camera and your lens, what you're using mostly?
Yeah. So I've got a Sony A7R4 right now. And then that's the camera body. And then for my lens, I use the Sony 90 millimeter macro for probably like 98% of my work. Um, a lot of people think that because it's a macro lens, like you're always using it close up and you've got to use it that way. But I'll use it for portraits and I'll just step back a lot farther
Mm.
just because it's one, such a sharp lens. So it takes really great photos. But especially with animals, like you don't always have time to sit and change your lens and do all these different things. Like I try not to shoot one animal for too long because it is inherently stressful on them, and I got to keep that in mind. But also, like they could do something cool at any moment, and I have to be ready to capture it. So I've sort of just stuck with using that macro for most everything. I do have a Zeiss 40 millimeter close focus lens, so that's a wider lens, so I can get more of a scene if it's like a I don't know, like a larger like heliderma or something, a bigger lizard where the macro lens can capture like this much of it, but I need the full body. I'll use that lens to get a wider shot, but still let me get close so I can fill the frame nicely. And that's the vast majority of the camera equipment. Light wise, I use Profoto studio strobes. Um, Studio strobes are kind of brand preference at this point. A lot of companies like Godox have gotten a lot better over the years too. I just chose those because they were the best at the time that I could afford. and they have just not failed me, so I keep using them.
Mhm.
But it's really not that much that I bring to a shoot. Like there's a lot of stands and cables and little connectors and weird things like that, but the core pieces of gear is just a camera body, one, maybe two lenses and the lights. And that's kind of it.
If you are new to reptile keeping, then you are probably being bulldozed over with a tsunami of information. What species should you get? How should they be fed? What lighting do you need? What enclosure do you need? There is so much information to process as a new keeper, it can be incredibly overwhelming. That's why I want to tell you more about ZooMed's Education Center. You can head to zoomed.com for a growing resource of information for beginning reptile and specialized pet caregivers. You'll find care guides for beginner species, as well as how to select the appropriate lighting and heating, which is a crucial element to keeping reptiles properly. The lighting and UVB section is rich with helpful resources, both written and in video format, including the Power of the Sun video series that ZooMed did a few years ago, which is an incredibly helpful series for folks who are just getting into understanding reptile lighting. You can also sign up for the UVB reminder newsletter, which will prompt you when it's time to change your bulbs. Now, if you own or manage a pet store, you're also going to want to know about ZooMed University, which is a free online training tool designed to help you train your staff to make sure they fully understand the unique care requirements for exotic pet care keeping, as well as how to pass that knowledge on to interested pet owners. Make sure to check out zoomed.com for more information. Well, and it is remarkable the amount of detail you can pull out of the animals. I mean, you can look at them, but for some reason, especially the dart frogs, so I can sort of understand why that's your favorite to shoot, because it's almost like the more you look at the photo, the more you see in a way. Like there's just so much detail inside the skin of a dart frog that you don't necessarily catch with your own eye.
Yeah, and especially like the Ranitomea species where they're like the size of your thumbnail, like the human eye can only do so much. And even if you like get it physically close to your face and look, you still can't see that finer detail, like the pores on their skin or the texture on their skin. Like I think a lot of people assume every single one is just very smooth and shiny, but a lot of them have really cool bumpy textures and stuff like that. So it's always cool to like see a new frog for the first time with my eyes and then see what my camera picks up and how different those things can be.
Yeah, definitely. And is there a challenge with the dart frog specifically because they're shiny? Like, is there things about that make it more difficult to shoot?
Sort of. So typically what I do is I keep a couple deli cups on hand, one of them to put over the frog while it's on the acrylic, just so if I need to stand and stretch or something, it's not going to hop away. But I do another one for just like a quick rinse. So I'll use whatever the water the keeper uses for the tanks. I'll put it in a clean cup, clean it off to get all the dust and whatever from the enclosure off of it, because when you're shooting at that resolution and that close up, you see every little speck. So I try and save myself some Photoshop time. And then after that bath, it sort of depends on the frog. So if you look like the Ranitomea variabilis, so there's the highlands that are a little bit more textured, and the gradient is a little bit different on there. It almost looks more like a spray paint. And the southerns are like that really like candy apple high gloss looking frog. So I'll usually take a couple pictures of the frog and see what the skin's looking like up close. And if it's one that's more textured, I'll take a paper towel and really carefully dab some of the water from that quick rinse off of it. Because what happens is like if my fingers are the texture, the way that the water adheres to their skin, it just smooths it all over and you lose all of that. But for a frog that's naturally super smooth and shiny, I don't need to do that. I just have to be a little bit more intentional about how my light hits the frog so that you don't get this huge glare across it. I have gotten to some people over the years that say like I should shoot with a polarizer or something, which helps get rid of that glare. But like that's what the frog looks like.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
So like why would I get rid of that? They're just going to look like a plastic toy.
Yeah, you want to see that shine.
Yeah, so it kind of just depends on the animal for how I'll approach that. But it just depends on the texture and the kind of shot that I want.
And then if someone wanted to take nice photos with their iPhone, do you have any tips for them that are kind of some things that you've picked up along the way doing it professionally?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, like, I mean, the iPhones now are like twice the resolution of my first camera. So it's already a huge head start. I think the biggest things to pay attention to is the exposure and the light in the background. So I have a little bit more control over what my camera focuses on through my DSLR. But if you're using a phone, it might pick up on different things. So you want to make sure that you're using like that tap to focus so you get it right on the frog or the lizard, snake, whatever it is. And then at least on iPhones, I'm sure it's similar on Android phones, you can sort of like click and hold to drag your exposure. I would play around with that because if you lower the exposure a little bit, especially when you're in a tank, you can get like a nice moodier shot. It's a little bit higher contrast, better shadows. The highlights aren't as blown out from like the crazy bright lights that everyone uses.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really dial in that exposure there. There are some apps like Moment has like their photo app and their lens attachments for phones. I've used some of that stuff. I think once you get a full camera, it's hard to go back. But I mean, there are plenty of people using those types of things and getting super great results. I think the biggest thing that we're getting now that we didn't used to get is just the resolution of these cameras because it's just insane compared to what it was.
Yeah, it really is. The other day I filmed something on my iPhone because I just didn't feel like taking my camera off its tripod. And when I was editing, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I can't even tell the difference between my DSLR or
Yeah.
the iPhone. It is pretty
Yeah.
amazing. You just don't have as much flexibility to do different things with.
Agreed. And I think, and this is, I don't know, that annoying artsy comment, but there's something about the craft of taking a photo that you lose with a phone camera
Yeah.
versus with a traditional camera. You like feel like you're in control and you're more a part of the process. And that's really something that I like over a phone camera. But I mean, I've seen pictures where I would never have guessed that it was taken with a cell phone. I mean, Apple does all of those shot on iPhone billboards that are like the size of buildings, and it's an incredible photo. And it's nuts what you can do now.
Yeah, it really is. What about tips for? Actually, before I move on, I just want to say, like, for the ultra nerds who want to know like your settings and everything, that is going to be in your book. And I flipped to the book and you have this. So maybe could you quit, because I don't want to go through settings. That's going to be way too deep for most people. But for people who actually are interested and want to know how you're taking these photos, where can they learn about that?
So there's a couple different things that I look at when I'm taking a shot. So every lens has an aperture that is its sharpest point. So generally speaking, like you have your aperture, like your lower aperture is like 2.8, and that's how you get that really nice soft blurred background and a smaller area of stuff that's in focus. And then you can go super sharp on the high end, like 14, 15, get everything in focus, everything looking sharp. But there is actually a difference in the sharpness and what's in focus. So every lens that I get, I look up what that sharpest point is and that highest resolution, and I try and stick really close to that. For my macro lens, it's about that 7.1 range, plus or minus a stop. So I try and start there and then adjust all of my other settings around that.
Gotcha.
And that's how I keep things sharper. I also tend to like that shallower depth of field, so not the whole animals in focus, because you can use that to like draw attention to certain things and show people what you're most interested in, make a shot look a little bit more dramatic. So I'll stick there. For aperture, for ISO, I tend to shoot pretty low. That also helps preserve some detail, especially in macro stuff. There are probably some people that will debate that and say that like 400 ISO is fine, but I typically shoot like 80 to 150, somewhere in there. So it's pretty dark, which is why I've got my flashes. So then for the strobes, I'll turn those on and I try and keep them as low power as possible, which might sound counterintuitive because it's already a dark shot. But one, you want to underexpose your shot and then bring it up later when you're editing, because that'll also help save detail. But also the duration of the light of the flash changes how quickly you can stop motion. So if you think of like if you're in a club and there's a strobe light, and it looks like everything is like moving in really slow motion.
Hmm.
That's essentially what you're doing. So the shorter you can have that flash duration last, the faster things you can stop. So that's how I get like those tongue flick photos with snakes and things like that looking really sharp. It's because I've got everything like right on the edge of what's possible, and then I bring it up later when I edit. So that's sort of how I approach all those settings and bring it together. It's more so like, what do I, which settings are going to get me the absolute best out of the gear that I'm using
Hmm.
and set me up for the type of post processing that I want to do afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to do it. I mean, because you have these like floating variables, so you almost have to
Hmm.
decide which one you're prioritizing. And you're saying aperture gives you the like if you want to go after sharpness, you make aperture your priority, and then you.
Hmm.
I remember when I first got my camera, I had no clue what I was doing. I would just like bump up the ISO just to make it so I could see myself, and it's just like, why is it so grainy? It's like a really expensive camera. I have no clue. I'm just like so dumb. But
Yeah.
yeah, lighting is definitely key, and not just cranking up whatever
Yeah.
setting makes the little screen on the camera make you look good.
Yeah. And then, like, I don't know, there it gets all like rules and stuff. Like, people are so cautious about like blowing out their highlights when they're shooting on white or whatever. But like, I blow them out on purpose. I'm like, I want it to be perfectly white, so I don't care how awful it is in the first shot because I'll just do some little cleanup later. As long as the animal is good,
Yeah,
then I'm all set. And again, a lot of that just comes down to just do it hundreds and thousands of times, and you'll find what works. And now, like, I don't even think about what I'm doing as I'm doing it because it's just muscle memory at this point. I know if, I don't know, something's not in focus, my brain is just like, okay, that's your index finger. Just move that 2 clicks to the right.
yeah, yeah.
So it just becomes second nature. And the only way to get to that point is just by practicing and doing it.
Exactly. And for those who want to see, if people pick up your book, there's a little stamp next to each photo, which I think is such a
Hmm.
genius idea of the settings that you use to capture that specific image.
Yeah. And I, one included it because people ask me all the time, what are the settings that you use? But the thing that I hope people notice, and they probably will because I'm telling them now, is page to page, the settings really do not change that much, but the images change drastically because you can tell the different quality between the different cameras that appear, and then how I've adjusted my lights, how I've adjusted my like physical position, like how I hold the camera and line it up. So I wanted to like give people that insight, but also show that like settings are not really what makes a good photo a good photo. It's just one aspect of it.
Yeah.
So even as I was editing the book, I'd go back through like, I can't even remember if I changed this one because it's exactly the same as this photo from a different shoot on the page next to it. But it is pretty consistent, and it's for those reasons I just explained and all that technical jargon that I just found that system and sweet spot that works. And I just kind of rinse and repeat that.
Yeah, yeah. And then what are some challenges you've come across for actually shooting animals? Because it's not as simple as, like you said, the downside of shooting people is you have to deal with their complaints, but the downside of shooting animals is that you can't tell them, like, lift your chin, look at, like the
Yes.
things, like you can't direct them. So what are some challenges that you've had? And I'd love to hear about your shooting of venomous animals as well, because that adds another element. And then also
Yeah.
what are some ways that you like try to encourage an animal to be in a position that you want it to be in?
Yeah. So, man, where to even start? I think one thing I've said a lot is that what separates a good animal photographer from a not so good animal photographer is patience.
Hmm.
You have to have an obscene amount of it. And you also have to realize that, like, you're just not going to get the photo sometimes. And that just is what it is. Like, if I'm not getting what I want, but I can tell that the animal's stressed out and things are not going well, it's just kind of like, well, okay, well, that sucks, but this is just not happening. Like, I've never lost an animal on a shoot and I don't plan to. So you always have to put that first. And then you have to be patient because, again, you can't tell them what to do and they're always going to sort of do what they want. And you kind of have to go along with it. I think something that helps is once I would like start taking pictures of animals that you're most familiar with because you understand their mannerisms and how they move. So you can sort of anticipate what's going to happen. So one thing I've noticed working with geckos, for example, everybody loves like that tongue shot where it's like looking the eyeball doing whatever. the vast majority of geckos that I've worked with, they do 3 licks and they hit their eye on the third one. So they like there's a first one where it's like their nose, and then a second one where they work over, and then a third one where they'll get their eye. And that happens almost all the time. So I know if I see that first one happen, I can get ready for that eye shot and I can be there when it's going to happen. For frogs, for instance, like you kind of know that they're going to jump and do like that splat type of move where they just sort of land there, but then they will correct their posture and they'll sit up. So, how can you be ready for that moment? And then some of them that are more tolerable, you can just bump their nose a little bit, like ball pythons, for example. They do bite, but not all of them bite very frequently. So you can just give them a little tap and readjust them. Some lizards and stuff, you can be a little bit more hands on. But a lot of it is just knowing the animal that you're working with and taking a minute to observe so you can try and think through what you're trying to get. And again, the more you do it, the easier that becomes because once you've spent dozens of hours with an animal, you can sort of anticipate what's going to happen. You don't have to spend so much time in the moment of the shoot figuring that out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Just understanding the body language is definitely going to be key.
Yeah.
And then, so what about shooting venomous? How are you doing that safely?
Um, so I would preface that none of it is inherently safe.
Okay.
Because it's
like, what is it called? Like when the people are like looking through a camera lens and then they get hit by a bus or whatever, because, you know, when you're like, you've almost like removed yourself from the world because you're
yes.
like, I don't know if there's a name for that, but that's definitely a thing.
Yeah. And especially because I'm using a macro lens, what I'm seeing is not at all what the real world looks like. I look like I'm super close and I can't tell how far I am from the subject.
Right.
So the first thing is I've always got at least one person, usually 2 people, like sort of on set with me, where someone can watch the snake and someone can watch me. And they'll just like help me keep my distance because like snake to snake, the strike range is so different. Even like young snakes to adult snakes, you're getting so much different range there. So there are just so many factors. And especially because I don't keep venomous snakes, I don't know as much about their behavior. So it's also important to have someone there that does, and it's specifically their animal so they can tell like, hey, it's not happy, like we got to call it, or just to give me heads up and things to look for. So having those spotters and people to just make sure that I'm staying as safe as possible is helpful. The other thing I do is I put sort of like a shield on my camera. So it's just a sheet of plexiglass. So it's strong and rigid, hooked up to like a rail system that attaches to the bottom of the camera. And then I just cut a hole in the center and put my camera lens through it. Mm-hmm. And that's there, and not inherently to help me get even closer and get a different shot, but to keep my hands safe, because realistically, that's going to be the first thing that a snake would hit if it struck. And then I do try and keep the shield sort of angled forward a little bit away from the camera so that if a snake hits, it's going to go down. Because if it was angled this way, then it's just going to go up and over to my head, and no one wants that.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, because that is one thing that I mean, you have some incredible shots of venomous snakes, but you wonder, like, how do you do that without, like, risking yourself? So,
yeah, I would definitely not recommend that people just jump into that. And again, make sure that you're working with an experienced handler that really knows those animals, because it's, in my opinion, unfortunate how easy it is to get a venomous snake in some states. And like we've all seen those stories of people getting bit and things like that. And you never want that to be you. So you got to take it as serious as you can and take precautions. And if you're not comfortable and you're not relaxed and you're not calm, you're going to make mistakes. So if snakes are also not for you, don't try and be brave and cool, because that's when mistakes happen, when you're not relaxed and focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe you can walk us through a little bit of the editing process. Like once you've taken the raw photo, mm-hmm. you put it up onto Photoshop. How much do you actually change? And I know you talked about taking out some dirt and maybe like skin sheds or things like that.
Yeah.
Like what do you do post?
It kind of depends. I try not to do a lot because I'm trying to get through dozens of images, like final images, and you got to comb through a lot of bad ones to get there. So it takes a lot of time. So I try and get it close in camera, but usually, like I talked about earlier, everything's a little bit underexposed, so I brighten it up a little bit. General cleanup for dirt, and then going back to like just difficulties working with animals. Sometimes like their head was perfectly positioned for the light and then they move slightly, so like their body is brighter than their head is. I might have to do some like masking and then rebalance it so it's not weird like you're looking at it and their butt is the brightest part of the photo. I might darken that and then brighten the face up a little bit, and then just color correct to make sure the colors are accurate. And that's about all I do. In extreme cases, like I don't know, I've seen snakes where they just have like a wonky scale or something that I've got to like cut and rotate back into place. Or I don't know, you'll see with like geckos and lizards all the time. Maybe they're like missing a fingernail or something like that. So I'll usually try and adjust the crop on the shot to get rid of that stuff. But if I can't and they need a little like beauty retouching, I'll do some of that too. But usually it's just a quick dust cleanup and then uh, balance the light and color and all of that.
If you are a regular listener to the podcast and you want to help support the production of the show, make sure you head to patreon.com/animals at home. For as little as $3 per month, you can help me pay for the service fees that go along with editing and producing the show. And for as little as $5 a month, you have early access to the episodes. Thank you very much for your support. Enjoy the podcast. The color thing is what really blows my mind. I first experienced this phenomenon, what I'm about to talk about, with editing audio, and then I now experience it with doing color correction, which I don't really do much of with my own editing. But with when I first started editing audio, it only takes you like maybe half an hour of trying to edit audio before you forget what sounds good. Like you're just like,
Yes.
now I have no clue. Like, is this good? Is this bad? You just dig yourself into a hole where you have like no firm ground to stand on, and now you forget what sound is. And the same
Yes.
thing happens with color. Like you start editing color, then you're like, now I have no idea. Is this the right thing or is this the wrong thing? And then you take away. I have two monitors, and then it took me a while to realize that one I look like I'm sunburnt, and one I look like I'm pale. And
Yeah.
I'm like color correcting on once. I'm like, I don't even know why am I doing this because I can't tell. So how do you make the photos reflect reality in the best way possible? Plus, you doing it on a computer when like is the screen reliable? You do color calibrate the monitor.
Yeah. That reminded me of something. I got a new laptop a couple years ago, and I was editing on my external monitor, and then I went to just do some like file organization stuff on the laptop, and they looked so different.
Yeah.
And I know like I have a color calibrator for my monitor, and then I apply those settings to both screens. So like I know that they are technically fine, but one just looks so off and it was driving me nuts. And then I realized that Apple has this like a night shift type thing that they put on the laptops, like they did with the phones, and that was on. But that was killing me. It's the same thing. We're like, what even is reality anymore?
Yeah.
What is white? What is black? It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing how your like perspective completely goes out the
Yeah.
window.
But so a couple different things. One of them, I do a lot of color correcting just by my own eye. You can use it's like a gray card is what it's called, where it's like a specific color of gray. And if you hold that up, you can take the white balance from that in like Lightroom, Capture One, Photoshop, whatever. And the software knows what that color is supposed to be. So then it'll correct the rest of the image and then you can apply it to everything else.
Mm.
The problem with that, with animal photography, is that you are really supposed to retake a picture of that card every time you change your light or camera settings or the angle that you're shooting at. And that's just not feasible on a shoot because the animal's moving constantly. I'm moving things around constantly. So I sort of moved away from doing that. And what I do is I white balance off of my background since it's white and black. I'll use that as the starting point, and then I manually adjust it from there. Once you've looked at enough animals, you kind of know like the hue and saturation that the different animals fall in, and you can tell if something's off. Like that's not the like that green is too blue or whatever it is. Like you just get a sense where things look off. And I've started to just do a lot of it manually that way, just because it's faster and easier for me. And I mean, some of the frogs, even like I photographed the same frog multiple times over 10 years. So I just know like this is what that looks like. And then it's good. And then I always do a final export and look at it on my phone because you can't color correct phones. And people are always going to look at things at different brightness levels and they'll maybe have their night mode on or whatever. So I'll sort of pull it up on my phone, adjust my brightness a little bit, make sure it all still looks good, and then call it done from there. So
Mm.
it's a little bit of quote unquote following the rules with calibrating my monitor and all of that. But over the years, it's just become like a do it by my own site type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're working with the animals visually all the time, you kind of get a sense of what they should look like, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not like oversaturating it and making it look kind of fake. Like your images always look very, very real, and when you flip to your book, everything looks like exactly as you would expect, but in a brilliant way. Like, it's not nothing's been taken away from the fact that it's not the
Mm-hmm.
actual animal itself. So I think it's kind of like you've nailed it in that department.
Yeah. I mean, like they look fine as is. There's there's no need to edit beyond that or change things. I will
Exactly.
say, like, you'll see some animals too, and like I have keepers tell me this all the time. Like, my animals look so much better in natural light. Like when I take it outside and it's in the sun, it looks so much better. And like, how do you do that with your photos? Like, you can't do that with a phone or whatever. You can, you just have to understand light temperature.
Mm.
So the sun is a much warmer light than like the lights you've got behind you. They're probably still like full spectrum LEDs,
Yeah.
but sunlight temperature is a lot warmer looking. And that really brings out especially like browns and neutral colors in animals. So you'll see stuff that looks very different in a tank versus outside. And I always try to lean more towards that like natural sunlight type look versus that cool uh like tank look, if that makes sense.
So do the lights, like the strobe lights you use, are they set to a warmer temperature?
I can change them. I've got them sort of just neutral, I guess is the
Okay.
way that I would use it. Just like a pretty consistent, I think it's like 5,600 Kelvin is
Yeah.
the temperature. But I just, again, I do a lot of those fine tuning adjustments in editing later to get it exactly to where it needs to be. And
Okay,
then you've
cool.
got like iridescent animals and stuff like that where it's kind of all out the window because how they look, if the light is at like one angle versus another angle, is just totally different. You kind of got to just make a choice.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the book. I'd love
Sure.
to know kind of, was this a plan for the last few years, or did this something recently pop up? Like, what made you pull the trigger on putting this together?
So I've talked about doing a book for years. It's gone through a couple of different iterations, talked about some partnerships with other people doing it. And it just kind of all came down to like not the right time in my life to do it. Um, Last summer is when I really got serious about it. And it kind of came from a standpoint where I was just feeling really burnt out with photography. And I was like, I've kind of like done most of the animals that I want to do. Like there are some that I want to, but people don't have Komodo dragons in their basement or their living room. So that
Hmm.
one is going to be more challenging. So I was just kind of hitting this hard place, but I was like, I can't stop until I've done a book. Like I want to exist in like a physical way versus just like I had a cool Instagram once and I did like some online stuff. Like I want to have a physical thing that represents the past decade of my life. So it's really last July. So it's like almost a year to the day. I don't know what day in July. I finally started getting serious about it and putting it together. And I got my friend who I've known for a long time that is just very design conscious and has a good perspective on things. We've worked at our day job together for a long time and done different creative things together. I brought him along to help because he doesn't know anything about these animals. So he was going to give me a really unbiased, critical view of like, this story doesn't make sense to like an average reader
Yeah.
or something like that. Or like, this layout could be better. Do you have a different picture of this animal? So it was really helpful to have that unbiased person to just push and help me make what ultimately became the book that's Well, by the time people are listening, the book is out. So,
Mhm.
uh, yeah.
And it seems like when like if for the layman they're like, oh, that should be simple. You just get some of the awesome photos that you like and some of your top photos, and you just put them in some pages. But my guess is that it was probably incredibly challenging. I'm wondering if it was more challenging than you were expecting it to be.
Way, way harder than I expected.
Really? Okay.
I'm so used to one cropping and framing a shot for Instagram or an 8 by 10 print. And the way an image fills that space is different than how it fills the space on a book page where there's also text. And especially when you're trying to fit multiple animals on a single page, how they all work together, how they flow. Like a big thing that I never would have thought of. My friend pointed out that it looks a little bit cleaner and tighter if the animals face inward on the book as
Mm,
much as possible because it naturally like draws your eyes into the book instead of like, oh, what's that animal looking at over there?
yeah.
So just little things like that, which means I've got to go back through. I've saved every image I've ever taken, thankfully, so I had a lot to pull from. But it's like this is a really great picture of this animal, but it's not looking the right way. And if I just flip the image digitally, it looks weird because of how the light is. So I had to just use my photos in a very different way than I was used to. And that made me look at them a lot differently and also gave me some freedom to do some really fun things. Like there's a picture of a rat snake in the book where it's sort of like it looks like it goes away, back away from the book, and then comes back in from the corner. That's actually two separate shots that I was able to crop and adjust to fit on the book page so it could interact with that page in a different way that wouldn't have made sense necessarily on like Instagram or something like that. So it was fun in that sense, but it was very brutal trying to go through like 10 to 20 terabytes worth of images to find
Oh my god.
the specific one that I'm looking for. Like, okay, whose animal was this? What year did I do that? Where is it? Stuff's roughly organized, but it's nothing's ever as organized as you think it is until you need to find something.
And then are the settings are in the photo, like the metadata for the photo, does that
Mhm.
include the camera settings? Like is can you find that somewhere, or do you just have to did you have to take notes?
No, it's all in the file, so I had to look it
Okay,
up. It was
gotcha.
that was challenging on a few photos because I wanted the book to include a little bit of everything that I've done. So like you'll see photos in the book that like the white is not perfect. It's a little weird. The posing is awkward. And I wanted to include all of that on purpose just to show like how things have changed and grown over time. But the hard part is that some of those like very first photos I've ever taken, I had to go back and try and find the original when I was not organized because I didn't plan on writing a book when I was taking these pictures. So I was like looking for old hard drives, trying to dig stuff up, and it was very difficult. But eventually, I was able to get the original file to find those settings.
And then what about like just like the dimensions of the book? Did you take time to think about that, or was it more like
Yeah,
this is the size of a normal photo book? Or
I went to Barnes and Noble and I just sat there and I looked at a bunch of photo books, just like how they felt in my hand, the different textures on the covers and things like that, the size that felt right. And eventually I decided to just stick with that 8 by 10 size. Uh, one, because it's a good book size. But two, and this is sort of where like you got to have business thinking with art thinking. The size of the book is going to impact the size of the packaging, which is going to impact the cost of the packaging, the cost of shipping it to people. So you'll see some really big photo books that are like 11 by 17 or like big sizes, but it just makes it more and more expensive. And apart from making the book, one of the goals I had was just to make it as accessible and affordable for people as I possibly could. So those factors went into just even like the paper choice, the size of the book, all of that stuff is with that end result in mind. Like, okay, I have this book. How's it going to get shipped out to people? How are they going to put it on a shelf? Where are they going to keep it? And all of that informed the size of the pages.
Yeah, it's way more to think about than you think.
Hmm.
Can you walk people through like what are they going to see in the book when they open it up? And is there a title of it? So tell us the title of the book and then
Yeah.
what they
Well,
you forget. Yeah. Oh, do
I
you have
got
it
it kind
there?
of
Oh,
right
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Let's
it's
see.
probably backwards.
No, no, no. I mean,
Maybe if you're in
no,
the video. It
no. It's good. Yeah.
says the title is "What is that?" And the reason I went with that is because I think anyone who's ever walked into a zoo or whatever, like that's the ultimate question, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, oh, what is that? What's that animal? And that's what I find myself saying that all the time when I'm at a new person's house or they got new animals. Like, oh, I've never seen that before. What is that? And then it's
Love that.
also I put the title on the spine of the book too, because if it is on a shelf or something, I feel like it's a cool conversation piece where it's just like begging you to come look at it,
For
basically. Like,
sure.
oh, what is
Yeah.
that? I should check it out. But the book really covers everything. So it's divided into sections based off animals. So there's frogs and toads, newts and salamanders, turtles and tortoises, crocodilians, snakes and lizards. Lizards is a very broad catch-all section. It's everything from like geckos to big monitor lizards and stuff like that. But there just wasn't another logical way to break things up because otherwise I'd have like one page of arboreal species and then one
Yeah.
page of terrestrial stuff. So just lizards. But yeah, it covers everything. I tried to include pictures from like my entire photography career. Just again, a little bit for me to relive everything that I've accomplished, but also just to show how things have developed and changed over time with different gear, me as a photographer, how I approached it, how things look different. So I tried to really make it like a complete story thus far of everything I've done.
Yeah, yeah, it's really well done. It's super fun to look through, and the photos are incredible. So
Thanks.
very good job. Yeah, I can, so tell us a little bit about like, did you are they drop shipped or A, how do people order them? But B, do you have like a giant box of these books at your house, or are people buying them and someone else is distributing them for you?
Yeah, so they are in production right now, and they are all going to come to my house. So the first run is 500 books, and that is a little over 1,000 pounds of books that is going to show up. And then I will carry them from, hopefully, they can put them in the garage at least. But I'll go from the garage to the basement. I will sit there, box them, and pack them all myself, and then take them to the post office. I really wanted that level of control, mainly because just how I am as a person, but also like anytime you add someone else to that chain, price goes up, your return goes down, and I would rather just have that all go through me so I can keep it more affordable for people. The book is $59.99, which I hope people think is a great deal. It's 254 pages. There's over 330 images. Like it's a big book.
Oh yeah, that's a great deal.
Yeah. So that was sort of the goal. I would just want to make sure that anybody that would want it wouldn't have a hard time paying for it or getting it. And to do that, I've got to put in a little bit more work and do everything myself. But I also, I don't know, I want to see the stuff and make sure it's in good shape before it goes out to someone so people are getting the best version of my work that they possibly can.
That must have been a pretty decent investment on your part too, buying that big allotment.
Yeah. I won't go into specifics, but it was a lot of money that I had to sit and think about.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like, again, back to that business thing. It's like, okay, well, what's the cost? How much am I going to sell it for? How many do I have to sell to break even? And it's all within a comfortable range, but it is not an insignificant amount of money to get those printed for sure.
And when do they go on sale? I know you were saying by the time people listen to this, it should be out by then, but in real time for us today, it's July 17th. When is
Yeah,
when is it out?
so pre-sale starts tomorrow for people that are on my like email VIP list through my website. The website's zthphotography.com. You can get there from my Instagram, Facebook, wherever. That'll go live through the weekend, just to give those people that have followed me and supported me like sort of first dibs at stuff. And then they'll be out, generally available for everyone next Monday, July 21st.
Okay, so it'll be out for at least a week or so by the time people hear this, so they can
Mhm.
go to your website to purchase it.
Yeah. And hopefully there's still some available. I really have no idea how quickly these things are going to sell. Uh, I would love to sell out 500 copies, mainly so my wife can get her yoga space back in our basement,
Yeah.
because 500 books takes up a lot of space. But yeah, if the demand is that great, we'll just figure out a way to get more, but there should be plenty available for people.
Okay, cool. And if not, or they're not interested in spending that much on a book, even though that's a great deal, if they want to get something smaller, there's also prints available and whatnot online that you sell
Yeah,
too.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've taken thousands of pictures at this point. So if something is not up on my website that someone wants a picture of, like they've seen something on Instagram, just reach out and let me know and I can get it up there for people. And in general, like I hope the book is educational for people, but I'm just some guy. I think a lot of people think that I don't know, too busy or not approachable or whatever. But like if anyone ever just wants to like send me a message on Facebook or Instagram, ask about what I do, ask for camera tips, I'll look at your photos, I'll help you out. No secrets. Like I'm happy to talk to people.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm super excited. I can't wait for it to be out in the public and for people to be able to get their hands on it, because I think it will sell out probably really quickly. Yeah, I'm sure you're anxious. You never know, but I think you've done so much good work. People are going to want to support that. So, is there anything else that we didn't mention today that you wanted to say before we officially wrap up?
I think just thanks to everybody. I mean, like I sort of talked about earlier, like there wasn't like a grand plan for any of this, and now I'm sitting on a podcast talking about a book that I've published, and that doesn't happen without people buying my art along the way so that I can afford camera gear, telling their friends about me, just even liking stuff on Facebook and Instagram. That stuff really goes a long way, and none of this would be happening without all those people. So I really, truly appreciate it. It's a crazy life I get to live, and it is like probably 20% my effort and 80% the effort of the people around me. So I really appreciate it.
Well, yes, from a fan perspective, we appreciate the work that you're doing and get to open up Instagram and see some amazing photos all the time. So
thanks.
Can you Zach, tell us, make sure people know where to find you on Instagram, Facebook, and maybe mention the website one more time.
Yeah. Facebook and Instagram are both I Am Making Art. All one word, but I Am Making Art. A few people have apparently thought it's I Am King Art, and it is not that obnoxious. It's I Am Making Art. And then my website is zthphotography.com. Z as in zebra, T as in Tom, H as in something that starts with an H. Hotel. That's what the word is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Zach, thank you so much for dropping by today and walking us through that process and getting into some of the nerdy details for the camera people out there. And like I said, I cannot wait to see the book on people's shelves. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, that is the end of that episode. Zach, thank you so much for jumping on a podcast to tell your story and walk through some of those interesting technical things when it comes to photography. I know that many people are always trying to take better photos with their iPhone, so hopefully this gives them some things to work on, but also I hopefully inspired everybody to go pick up Zach's book. It is an incredible book. Like I said through the intro, I'm definitely going to purchase a copy myself as soon as it's available next week in my time. For you guys, you're already listening. The book has been already out for a week or so. So if they aren't sold out yet, please go to Zach's website to pick yourself up a copy. Again, $59.99 is incredibly cheap for a book like this, with a nice book with tons of really beautiful images. I think most people would pay well into the $80 for that or more, or maybe even over $100 in some cases. So $59.99 is a great deal. So if you are interested in that book, head to his website, make a purchase. If it is already sold out by the time you're listening to this, then please just send Zach a message on either Facebook or Instagram and let him know you're interested. Because like I said through the intro, if it's sold out, we should still be able to let Zach know that there's enough interest to do another run. So either way, you will be able to get your hands on the book at some point, somewhere or another. And I think that is it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/animalsathome and join us there. Get automatically added to the Discord server, but also have early access to episodes. And of course, the money that I make through Patreon goes to support the production of this show. You can also head to animalsathome.ca/shop to pick yourself up a t-shirt or a sweater. $5 for every item does get donated to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. Like I said, all the show notes or the links from today's show are in the show notes. So if you are interested in purchasing a book or a print from Zach, make sure you go check out those links. I highly encourage you to at least purchase a print, because if you have a reptile room, there's nothing cooler in a reptile room than having reptile art on the wall. And I have lots of art on my wall here, pictures and drawings as well as photography. So I think it's a nice addition. Every time someone comes down to my reptile room, that's the first thing they notice is the artwork. So I can't recommend that enough. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next episode.